a former TV executive turned YouTuber, Paul Chato, recently made a controversial video calling for a complete and total shutdown of women making Star Wars until we can figure out what the hell is going on. And I don't know, I kind of agree with him. So here's what he actually said before anyone gets their panties in a bunch. He said, "I think we can now confidently conclude that not only is the Force not female, but women should be banned from producing, writing, or directing Star Wars entirely. I know that sounds harsh and that misogyny word, but the evidence is conclusive. Women should not be making Star Wars. And for good measure, you can include the soy boys like Dave Filoni and all the cucked proto-males living off the fumes of the past. Now, I'm willing to entertain the argument that this is mostly because of all the gender delusional, talentless DEI hires and social justice warriors who have taken over Hollywood, who have no clue that the history of cinema extends prior to the year 2000. It doesn't matter. Of course, there are women out there who could write and produce sci-fi. Just look at the incredible work of DC Fontana did for Star Trek, but I'm not seeing any evidence of someone of Fontana's skills being hired either.
You have to have passion. You have to actually have actual passion for what you're working on.
He said, just look at the giant turd Michelle Paradise turned Star Trek Discovery into, or Jessica Gao, the She-Hulk debacle. For me, the canary in the coal mine is their complete lack of interest in what I call gear porn, as in machinery, gadgets, and weaponry. The fact that stuff breaks and needs fixing, it makes for good plot points and sci-fi adventures. Women in general are not interested in gear porn.
Okay, he's actually, that's a really interesting point, and it kind of reminded me of something. So I was thinking about this, and he's right. So there's a reason why franchises like John Wick are as popular as they are, because there's literal gun porn in those films, and everyone talks about, and me and Phil have talked about endlessly on this show, like, one of the most important things to that franchise was the amount of people when they watched the original film, and you could actually count how many rounds were shot before he would reload, and it would be in line with how many rounds were in a magazine for that particular firearm. And as the movies went on, they got more and more detailed with the types of weapons they used, with the type of combat that was used in all of them. And or think of like the Fast and the Furious with cars and things like that, stuff that dudes really, really enjoy. And what's enjoyable to them is the minutia of things like that. So Chad Stahelski, who was one of the founding inspirations, who did John Wick, he's doing the Highlander movie with Henry Cavill, and he was talking about the fighting style and stuff that they're going to be using in the film. And he goes on this long post, so I'm going to read you what he says. He goes, so this says, the film promises to showcase Stahelski's signature action style, particularly in sword fighting, a challenging yet thrilling element for the director. He acknowledged the cinematic nature of such fights and expressed his enthusiasm for the project and all the history behind it. This is his quote. He says, "It's another opportunity to do to a property that I love," Stahelski said. "I love what it's about. I love working with immortality. I love love stories throughout time. I think it's a good way to take a great period piece in sci-fi and mix them together." And then he goes into all of this detail about the core type of sword fighting and how they're going to make it work in this film. That's detail. That's stuff that men like. That's things that they care about. That's the stuff they want to go through and watch the bonus features on. One of my favorites, guys, if you've ever seen the behind-the-scenes stuff for John Wick, they show you how they did the motorcycle scene where it's like there's fans blowing on them, and there's literal dudes in green screen outfits pushing the bikes as these guys are fighting. And then they show the side-by-side shot comparison of how it looks in pre-production, what it looks like with the green screen, and then what it looks like in final production. And that's what men get excited about, that type of detail. But that's not really what women get excited about.
Right.
And that's fine, but then direct franchises that women care about.
It's funny because, I assume that's one of the biggest reasons that women are not, for the most part, interested in Star Wars, and that they have a male-dominated fan base. And you can even tell this from a very early age in, toddlers, what they're interested in based on gender. Like, of course, like 2-year-old and 3-year-old boys, they love trucks. Like, and girls play with dolls and they make up scenarios with incredible amounts of emotional detail that, like, I remember like making up all these stories, and I would play school teacher with my toys and things like that. You can even see it in little children, what psychologically is attractive to them. So I can only assume that that would go on into their adult years and what they would be able to write for a TV show or a movie.
I'll give you an example. Okay, so Olivia is having me watch, she's watching Jane the Virgin. Okay, a lot of women working on Jane the Virgin. And
it's a telenovela.
It's a telenovela, and I'm not paying the closest attention, but there is a scene in season 2 where the character of Michael, who is a cop, is fired, and the guy says badge and gun, and I'm like, and I point out that he actually hands his weapon over the correct way, meaning that he doesn't just leave the magazine in and hand it to the guy with the barrel facing the cop. He actually holds it barrel down and grip out so the guy can take it safely. And I'm like, oh, that was really cool. They did that correctly. And that's the only thing I've taken from the whole show.
Yeah, details. Men will notice different things about these movies and TV shows. It's a very actually nuanced point that unfortunately is going to be lost on so many people who are going to see the thumbnail and the title that says ban women from Star Wars and then are immediately just going to come away with that impression that, you know, male Star Wars fans are toxic and they're just, you know, boys who think that girls have cooties essentially, and they have just a baseless exclusionary mindset toward all women. But like, that's never been the case.
The same thing, you could make the comment about somebody like Ann Nesenti in comics, who's a legendary comic writer, as compared to a lot of the ones that work today that don't seem to actually be interested in writing for the superhero genre. They want to write about characters sitting around and eating food and talking, which isn't really what the medium is about, right? Or even somebody like Patty Jenkins, who did good directing, but once she was given the ability to write and direct in Wonder Woman 2, it didn't really go that well. Okay, there's examples. Women do really, really good directing television, and I wonder if a lot of that has to do with the fact that because of budgetary restrictions, there is a lot more dialogue and writing. Granted, a lot of television is plug and play, meaning that it's a well-oiled machine and they just drop directors in there because they need the person there to do it. And it's not really, they don't have the same vision. Like, one of my favorite examples is like, look up any random director that's big budget Hollywood, and a lot of times you'll see they do like a random episode of TV, and it very rarely has any flair or flourish that's unique to that director, because directing television is very, very different than directing films. But it really is about interests and what motivates you. And his point about gear is actually perfectly formed. Because I
have never heard that argument before, actually. So I'm glad that he brought it up.
Yeah.
And it's not just that they're hiring women in leading positions to write and direct all of these shows and movies. It's that they're picking like the most annoying, ideologically possessed women ever. So he said, other than, you know, them just being women and also the gear porn aspect, he said the common thread is their social activism. We all know how well that's going. I'm fairly certain that social activism wasn't on the mind of Marcia Lucas when she edited the first 3 good Star Wars movies. And just to prove to you that I'm not a complete asshat, Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon is worse than the Acolyte, he called it. I look forward to the comments of women in the business who can't get work because of DEI, because you're just not the right kind of woman.
Yeah.
They're looking for a very specific type of woman. Yes. And that's Charmin Obaid-Chinoy, Leslie Headland, and it includes the people starring in this as well.
And also to this point about gear, it's like one of the biggest complaints, one of the things that we don't get into a lot of when we're talking about the Acolyte, we don't critique the lore heavily, but that's what dudes love. Dudes love going neurotically over the lore and pointing out why headbutting a lightsaber is stupid, even if cortosis is a thing. Okay, that's where you're going to get the men, that type of detail. And perhaps he's right that a male director and a male writer would focus more on those types of things. But
I've even just noticed in a lot of these Disney Star Wars shows, when they show lightsabers, I don't know why, but they like eject really slowly. Like they have erectile dysfunction.
This never happens, I
lightsabers,
swear.
Seriously.
Every time yeah.
But that's aside from the point. Since we're talking about bad writers, I did want to bring up this recent comment from Daphne Keene, whose character actually just died in The Acolyte. Sorry for the spoiler if anyone cared. But she spoke in an interview recently about Leslie Headland's decision to kill off her character Jecki, as well as the character of Yord in the most recent episode. She said there are so many directors in blockbuster sagas that are scared to kill off characters and are uncomfortable with bringing characters back to life, and all of these little writer tricks that I think are quite cheeky. And I really like that she was actually killing people, because if you're not making it dangerous, then why are we even here? Why are we concerned by the story? Why do we care? Leslie Headland has so much backbone as a writer to make you fall in love with these characters and then slaughter them like pigs and be like, yeah, this is our villain. We're not just saying he's big and scary.
Well,
we're actually showing you how big and scary he is.
Is this supposed to be like the Red Wedding of Star Wars?
This is... I mean, obviously the problem with killing off those characters
nobody cared about
is that nobody cared about Jecki and Yord in the first place, and they were only in 4 episodes and no one liked them.
Yeah, here's the other thing. Like, when a show is a limited series and not something that's going to go more than one series, that doesn't have the same weight.
No, not at all.
That means that it was planned from the beginning.
Right.
And that's not the same weight.
Yeah, exactly. So I also saw some cope threads about people who don't get the hate for The Acolyte. One person said, I just asked my 13-year-old nephew if he had been watching The Acolyte, to which he replied, no, and I'm glad I haven't. I asked why, and he said he heard that it sucks, and he heard that it ruined Anakin. Man, I hate YouTubers. We're just gonna blame YouTubers.
Of all the things that never happened, this never happened the most.
Like, it's literally my 3-year-old walked up to me and said, Mommy, how are we going to survive in Trump's America? Yeah. It's literally that, but for coping about how bad The Acolyte is. Another person said, I've caught up from episodes 1 to 5 on The Acolyte in one evening. I'd love for someone to explain to me in small, dumb Chad words why I'm supposed to be hating this. Like,
no one's saying you have to hate it.
You're not supposed to hate it.
You're supposed to like what you like, and that's fine. I get made fun of all the time for liking shows that people think are substandard or lame. That's completely fine. Like whatever you want to like, but that's the problem when this stuff becomes highly politicized. Mm-hmm. Then suddenly you're bad for liking it, or you're bad for not liking it. I'm allowed to not like something that's popular. I'm also allowed to like something that everybody else thinks is crap. It's your job to be able to just tell everybody else to just piss off, and it's fine.
Here's the thing. I would believe this person at their word saying that they liked The Acolyte if their username weren't Boba Fetish and they didn't have a trans flag in their Twitter header.
Doesn't ring true.
But when you are praising The Acolyte and saying that YouTubers are the reason that it's getting hate right now and it's getting review bombed and all this stuff, I think that you're claiming to like something more than you do just for ideological reasons.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.